Welcome to Life Stories, where we explore the profound lessons and emotions that shape our lives. In today's story, we follow Rachel, a woman whose seemingly perfect life crumbles when her husband's betrayal leaves her broken and alone. But amidst heartbreak and despair, Rachel embarks on a journey of self-discovery, resilience, and unexpected love. Through the kindness of strangers, the strength of friendship, and the beauty of second chances, she finds a new beginning that changes everything. Subscribe to Life Stories to begin today's inspiring tale and uncover the extraordinary power of hope and healing. Let's start the story. I spent the entire morning tidying up the house, meticulously dusting the furniture and vacuuming every corner. By lunchtime, I was ironing Ryan's shirts, ensuring every crease was perfect. He liked everything to be neat and in order, and I took pride in keeping our home just the way he liked it. After finishing the chores, I decided to prepare his favorite dish: chicken cordon bleu stuffed with cheese and ham. I knew he would appreciate the effort. For dessert, I made his beloved raspberry cheesecake. The recipe was my mother's, and it always turned out perfectly. I have always believed that love is built on care and attention. I never let myself look unkempt. Even at home, you'd never find me lounging in sweatpants with uncombed hair or a bare face. I wanted Ryan to come home to a wife who looked fresh and radiant, someone he could be proud of. As I looked in the mirror that afternoon, styling my hair and applying a light touch of makeup, I felt a pang of hope. Things between us had been tense lately, but I hoped my efforts would ease the strain. At exactly 7 p.m., I heard Ryan's car pull into the driveway. My heart fluttered, as it always did when he came home. I quickly finished setting the dining table, pouring 2 glasses of crisp white wine, and rushing to the door to greet him. Ryan walked in, tossing his briefcase carelessly by the door. His expression was tired, his shoulders heavy with stress. "Welcome home," I said warmly, wrapping my arms around him. He gave me a perfunctory kiss on the cheek, his frown deepening as he caught sight of the dining table. "What's all this for?" he asked gruffly. "I thought I'd surprise you," I replied, trying to sound cheerful. "I made your favorite dinner. I wanted us to have a nice evening together." He didn't look pleased. Instead, he sighed and muttered something about how the day had been terrible. "Business is awful," he said as he sat down at the table, ignoring my attempts to lighten the mood. "Sales are down, and income is dropping. It's a disaster." He angrily tossed a folder onto the table, filled with reports and graphs I could barely make sense of. I cautiously glanced at the numbers. It was clear the situation at his clothing factory was dire. "Why did you stop working with those reliable suppliers?" I asked gently, hoping to steer the conversation toward a solution. "That was when everything fell apart." Ryan's face turned red, and he slammed his hand on the table. "Are you accusing me of being a bad manager?" he shouted. "You think I can't run the factory without your input?" "No, that's not what I meant," I said quickly, trying to calm him. "I was just pointing out something in the reports." But he wouldn't listen. His sarcasm cut through me like a knife. "Thanks for your support," he spat, his voice dripping with bitterness. I felt tears welling up in my eyes. "I've stayed home because that's what you wanted," I said, my voice trembling. "I cook, I clean, I wait for you, and all I want is to understand what's bothering you." Ryan's response was a cold, stony silence. "Is it me?" I asked, desperate for an answer. "Have I done something wrong? Or is it something else? You barely talk to me anymore. You don't even look at me when we're in bed. Please, Ryan, tell me what's going on." He drained his wine glass and stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You really want to know what's going on?" he shouted. "Fine, I'll tell you." I braced myself, not knowing what was coming. "Yes, there's someone else," he said, his words hitting me like a sledgehammer. "I'm sick of this. Sick of you. I'm divorcing you. I've already made up my mind." I stared at him, my world crumbling around me. Ryan, please. I begged. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. Whatever it takes. But he didn't care. I don't need you, he said cruelly. I've wasted enough years of my life with you. You can't even give me children. What's the point? His words were a death knell to everything I had believed in. I felt my heart shatter into 1,000 pieces. What am I supposed to do? I whispered, tears streaming down my face. Where will I go? Ryan's reply was ice cold. Figure it out, he said. Walking out of the room. That night, I packed a suitcase with trembling hands, taking only the essentials, some clothes, my documents, and a little cash. I checked into a cheap motel, the reality of my situation sinking in as I lay on the stiff bed. For years, I had poured my heart and soul into my marriage. And now, in the blink of an eye, it was gone. My husband had replaced me, and I was left with nothing. As I stared at the cracked ceiling of the motel room, I couldn't help but wonder, how had it come to this? Where had I gone wrong? The tears came harder, the weight of betrayal suffocating me. But somewhere, deep within the despair, a small spark of determination flickered. This wasn't the end of my story. I had to believe that. The next morning, the reality of my situation hit me like a cold slap. My savings were inaccessible, frozen by Ryan, and the house I had called home for years was legally his. I stared at the hotel mirror, my reflection a shadow of the woman I once was. The tears had dried, but the emptiness lingered. I needed help, but who could I turn to? My thoughts drifted to Emily, my best friend since childhood. Emily had always been my confidant, the one who stood by me when life got hard. I picked up the phone and dialed her number with shaky hands. Rachel? What's wrong? She answered, her voice full of concern. I choked out my story, barely able to form sentences through the sobs. Emily's reaction was immediate and comforting. Stay where you are, she said. I'll come to you. Don't worry. We'll figure this out. When Emily arrived, her warm hug almost broke the dam of my composure. She listened as I poured out everything, the years of neglect, Ryan's cruel words, and the betrayal that left me homeless. Emily was furious. Ryan is a monster, she said, her eyes flashing. You don't deserve this. I don't know what to do. I whispered. His frozen our accounts. He has everything. Emily's expression softened. We'll fight this, she said firmly. You need a good lawyer. Someone who knows how to handle a man like Ryan. She handed me the business card of Michael Gray, a reputed family lawyer in the city. Michael is the best. Emily assured me. He'll make sure you get what's rightfully yours. Clinging to hope, I contacted Michael and scheduled a meeting. When I arrived at his sleek downtown office, I was impressed by his calm demeanor and professional approach. He assured me he'd handle everything. Don't worry, Rachel, he said confidently. Men like Ryan think they can get away with anything. But they can't. For the first time in days, I felt a glimmer of hope. Michael's reassurance gave me strength, and I clung to it like a lifeline. But as the days went by, something began to gnaw at me. Michael's attitude seemed too polished, too rehearsed. And Emily, though supportive, started acting strangely, avoiding eye contact when I asked about the case. One evening, as I sat in my motel room, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. The caller identified herself as Jenna, a junior lawyer at Michael's firm. Rachel, she said, her voice low and urgent. I need to meet you. It's about your case. I hesitated but agreed, sensing the gravity in her tone. We met at a quiet cafe, and Jenna wasted no time getting to the point. Michael isn't on your side, she said, her words slicing through me. He's working with Ryan. They've planned everything to leave you with nothing. The air seemed to leave the room. What are you talking about? I whispered, disbelief washing over me. Jenna leaned in, her eyes filled with sincerity. They're manipulating the evidence. And Ryan's mistress, your friend Emily, is part of it. I couldn't stay silent. You deserve to know. Emily. My stomach churned as the pieces fell into place. Her sudden concern. The lawyer's referral, it had all been a setup. The betrayal felt like a second knife in my back, cutting even deeper than Ryan's. Why are you telling me this? I asked, my voice shaking. Because it's wrong. Jenna replied. And I want to help you fight back. Jenna's words sparked a fire within me. I wasn't just fighting for my share of the house or my dignity, I was fighting for my sanity. For the belief that goodness still existed in the world. I agreed to work with Jenna, determined to expose the web of lies that had ensnared me. As we walked out of the cafe, Jenna placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. You're not alone in this, she said. For the first time in what felt like forever. I believed her. The next few days passed in a blur of preparation and quiet resolve. Jenna and I worked tirelessly to unravel the tangled web of lies Ryan and Emily had spun. With her help, I pieced together a plan to confront them. Though my nerves were frayed at the thought of facing the two people who had hurt me most. Jenna was relentless in her pursuit of the truth. She pored over documents, cross-referenced timelines, and even managed to find a few discrepancies in the financial records Ryan had submitted. Her determination fueled my own, giving me the courage to take the next steps. We decided the confrontation would happen at the house, my house. The one Ryan had effectively stolen from me. I wasn't sure how it would go, but Jenna assured me we had the element of surprise on our side. She had one more ace up her sleeve, though she wouldn't tell me what it was until the moment came. Trust me, she said with a small smile. You'll want to be there to see it. The day arrived, and my stomach churned with anxiety as we pulled into the driveway. The house looked the same as always, its pristine exterior belying the turmoil within. As I stepped out of the car, I felt a rush of conflicting emotions, nostalgia, anger, and an aching sense of loss. Jenna knocked on the door, her calm demeanor a sharp contrast to my own trembling hands. It was Emily who answered, her face blanching when she saw me. She was wearing one of Ryan's shirts, her hair tousled, as if she'd just rolled out of bed. Rachel, she stammered, her surprise evident. What are you doing here? I could ask you the same. I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. But I think we both know the answer. Ryan appeared behind her, his expression hardening when he saw me. What do you want? He demanded. You're not welcome here. I didn't flinch. This is still my house, I said firmly. And we need to talk. Ryan's smug demeanor faltered for a moment. But he quickly recovered, waving us inside with a dismissive gesture. Fine, he said. But make it quick. The living room felt like a battleground as we sat down across from each other. Ryan's confidence was palpable. And Emily sat beside him, her eyes darting nervously between us. Jenna wasted no time getting to the point. Ryan, she began, her tone measured. We're here because Rachel deserves answers. She deserves the truth about what's been happening behind her back. Ryan smirked. The truth? I think she already knows everything. Not quite. Jenna replied, pulling out a folder. Let's start with this. She handed him the results of a fertility test. And I watched as his face went from smug to stunned in a matter of seconds. What is this? He asked, his voice shaky. It's your test result. Jenna said calmly. It shows that you're infertile. Ryan. Which raises an interesting question. How is Emily pregnant? Emily gasped, her face turning ashen. Ryan. She began. But he cut her off. You lied to me, he shouted, rising to his feet. You said you were having my child. I didn't think it would matter. Emily cried, tears streaming down her face. I just wanted us to be together. Ryan turned on her, his anger boiling over. You've ruined everything, he bellowed. You're a liar and a cheat. The scene was chaos, their alliance crumbling before my eyes. Jenna stayed calm, letting the truth unfold. Then, With quiet authority. She said, "There's one more thing." She pulled out her phone and showed Ryan photos of Emily with another man. Her supposed lover. His face twisted in disbelief as the final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. "You disgust me." Ryan spat at Emily, his voice dripping with venom. "Get out of my house. I never want to see you again." Emily fled, her sobs echoing through the halls. Ryan sank into a chair, his face buried in his hands. For the first time, he looked broken, like the man I once loved was buried beneath layers of betrayal and regret. "I'll divide the assets," he muttered. "Just leave me alone." As Jenna and I left, I felt a strange mix of emotions: relief, vindication, and a bittersweet sadness. The truth had come out, and the ties that once bound us were severed. It was time to move forward. Walking away from the house that day felt like shedding the heaviest burden of my life. Yet, even as the truth freed me, it left a hollow ache in its place. The life I had built with Ryan, however flawed, was all I'd known for years. Now, I had to start from scratch. But where? And how? Jenna suggested I stay with her and her brother Jacob for a while. "It's a small apartment. But it's cozy," she said with a reassuring smile. "You'll have a roof over your head. And we'll figure out the rest together." Exhausted and with few options, I agreed. The apartment was modest but warm, filled with little signs of life: books stacked on tables, colorful throw pillows, and the faint scent of vanilla candles. It was the kind of place that felt alive, a stark contrast to the sterile luxury of the home I had just left. Jacob greeted me with a kind smile when I arrived. "Welcome," he said, extending a hand. "Any friend of Jenna's is a friend of mine." Jacob was unlike anyone I'd met before, gentle and unassuming, with a quiet depth that drew me in. He was an artist, Jenna explained, though he rarely spoke about his work. That night, as we shared a simple dinner, Jacob told me about his life. He had dreamed of becoming a full-time artist, but life had taken a different path. "I work as an engineer now," he said with a shrug. "It pays the bills, but it doesn't feed the soul." His words resonated with me. "Do you still paint?" I asked, curious. "Sometimes," he replied, his voice tinged with longing. "But not as much as I'd like." The conversation stayed with me long after I went to bed. In Jacob, I saw a kindred spirit, someone whose dreams had been sidelined by circumstances, yet who still carried a spark of hope. It was comforting to be around people who understood what it meant to rebuild from nothing. In the days that followed, I found solace in the rhythm of their home. Jenna was fiercely supportive, helping me sort through legal documents and strategizing for the future. Jacob, on the other hand, offered a quiet kind of companionship. He didn't ask many questions, but his presence was steady and grounding. One afternoon, he invited me to the park where he painted landscapes and portraits. "It's not much," he said, "but it's my escape." I watched in awe as Jacob transformed blank canvases into vivid scenes. His hands moved with a fluidity that spoke of years of practice and passion. It was the first time in weeks that I felt a flicker of inspiration. "You're incredible," I told him. And for the first time, he blushed. "Thank you," he said, a shy smile breaking across his face. "It's nice to hear that. Why don't you share your work online?" I suggested. "You could reach so many people." He hesitated. "I wouldn't even know where to start." "I'll help you," I offered, feeling a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in ages. "You just focus on painting." Over the next few weeks, we worked together to build a portfolio and share Jacob's art online. It wasn't long before people began noticing his talent. Comments poured in, and he even received requests for commissioned pieces. Watching Jacob's confidence grow was like watching a flower bloom in spring. It was beautiful, and it gave me hope that new beginnings were possible. As Jacob's work flourished, so did our bond. We spent hours talking about everything and nothing, discovering a shared love for books, music, and late-night cups of tea. His kindness and sincerity were a balm to my wounded heart. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't thinking about Ryan or the pain he had caused. Instead, I was thinking about the future and, tentatively, about Jacob. One evening, as we walked back from the park, Jacob stopped suddenly and turned to me. "Rachel," he said softly, "you're stronger than you think. And you're going to get through this. I can see it." His words hit me with a force I wasn't expecting. Tears welled in my eyes. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of gratitude. For Jenna. For Jacob. And for the chance to start over. For the first time in a long time, I believed him. I was going to be okay. The weeks turned into months. And my life began to take shape again. Piece by piece. With Jenna's legal expertise and relentless support, I managed to finalize my divorce settlement. I received a fair share of the house sale and a portion of Ryan's assets. It wasn't enough to erase the scars of the betrayal, but it was enough to rebuild. As the legal battles ended, the emotional weight began to lift, replaced by a cautious sense of hope. Jacob's art career, meanwhile, was flourishing. The online portfolio we had created continued to attract attention, and his work was featured in a local gallery. Seeing his dreams come to life brought me a joy I hadn't felt in years. We celebrated his success with Jenna in their cozy apartment, sharing laughter and stories late into the night. Jacob's gratitude was boundless, and his humility made it easy to root for him. But it was a chance encounter in the park that would change everything for us. One crisp autumn afternoon, Jacob and I were walking through the park. As we often did. He carried his easel and paints, ready to capture the golden hues of the season. As he set up near a bench, I noticed a boy sitting alone, his knees drawn to his chest. He couldn't have been more than 8 or 9, his face pale and his clothes too thin for the chilly air. Jacob noticed him too. "That's Ethan," he said quietly. "I've seen him here before. He comes to watch me paint sometimes." I frowned. "Where are his parents?" Jacob hesitated. "I don't think he has any. He told me his mom, well, she's not around. And his dad's never been in the picture." The sadness in his voice mirrored my own feelings. I approached the boy slowly, careful not to startle him. "Hi there," I said gently. "I'm Rachel. What's your name?" "Ethan," he mumbled, barely meeting my eyes. "Ethan," I repeated with a smile. "That's a great name. Do you like art?" He nodded shyly. "I like watching him paint," he said, glancing at Jacob. "It's peaceful." My heart ached for him. There was something about his quiet demeanor that reminded me of myself as a child, reserved, observant, and yearning for connection. I sat beside him, wrapping my scarf around his small shoulders. "It's getting cold out here," I said softly. "Do you have somewhere warm to go?" He shook his head. "Not really." Jacob joined us, his kind eyes full of unspoken concern. "Ethan, do you want to come with us for some hot chocolate?" he asked. "We could use some company." Ethan hesitated but eventually nodded. Together, we walked to a nearby cafe, where we spent the next hour talking. The more I learned about Ethan's life, the more my heart broke. His mother was in a rehabilitation center, and he was living in a group home with little stability or care. He spoke with a maturity far beyond his years. And yet there was a vulnerability in his voice that tugged at something deep within me. As we walked him back to the group home that evening, I couldn't shake the feeling that this meeting wasn't a coincidence. Ethan needed someone, and so did I. When Jacob turned to me and said, "We could help him," you know, I knew he felt the same. The process of fostering Ethan wasn't easy. There were interviews, paperwork, and countless assessments to prove we were capable of providing a stable environment. But through it all, we remained steadfast. Every step brought us closer to giving Ethan the home he deserved. 3 months later, he moved in with us. Watching him settle into his new life was nothing short of magical. His laughter filled the apartment, and his curiosity brought light to even the dullest days. He and Jacob bonded over painting, and I found joy in being the mother I had always dreamed of becoming. Then, the unthinkable happened, a miracle I had long stopped hoping for. I was pregnant. When the doctor confirmed it, I wept tears of disbelief and joy. Life, it seemed, was finally giving me the second chance I never thought I'd have. As I shared the news with Jacob and Ethan, their reactions were everything I could have hoped for: excitement, tears, and hugs that felt like home. Our little family, once built from broken pieces, was becoming whole. For the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. Life in our small but lively household blossomed in ways I had never imagined. Ethan quickly adjusted to his new life with us, thriving in the warmth and stability of a family that adored him. His laughter filled the air, and every day brought new joys and discoveries. Watching him paint beside Jacob in the afternoons or curl up with a book before bed reminded me that even amidst heartbreak, life has a way of surprising us with unexpected gifts. Meanwhile, my pregnancy progressed, and I found myself marveling at the miracle of it all. For years, I had believed motherhood was beyond my reach, a dream forever out of grasp. Now, as I felt the gentle flutters of my daughter growing inside me, I realized how much life had changed since I had walked away from Ryan. I had lost nearly everything, but what I gained in return was priceless: a new family built on love, trust, and mutual respect. Ethan, ever perceptive, was ecstatic about becoming a big brother. He would talk to my belly, his small hands cradling it as he promised to protect his baby sister. "She's going to love it here," he said one night, his voice full of conviction. "Just like I do." Jacob was equally excited, though his quiet demeanor rarely showed it outwardly. He focused on making our home even more special, turning his creativity into small acts of love. He built a beautiful crib from scratch, his hands carving intricate patterns of leaves and flowers into the wood. When he presented it to me, I couldn't hold back the tears. "It's perfect," I whispered, running my fingers over the smooth surface. "Thank you." His response was simple but heartfelt. "Anything for our family." As our lives flourished, echoes of my past occasionally found their way back to me. I heard from mutual acquaintances that Ryan's business was in shambles. Without my organizational skills and attention to detail, the clothing factory had suffered. Unable to pay his employees or manage his debts, Ryan was forced to sell the business and eventually move to a different town. It was said he spent his days in solitude, nursing regrets and bitterness. A part of me felt sorry for him, but another part knew this was the consequence of his own choices. Life had given him opportunities to build something meaningful, and he had squandered them. Then there was Emily, whose story ended even more tragically. I learned that her relationship with Ryan's replacement quickly unraveled, leading to a series of destructive behaviors. Her anger and jealousy spiraled out of control, culminating in an incident that left her institutionalized. It was a sobering reminder of how envy and deceit could consume a person entirely. But I didn't linger on these shadows from the past. Instead, I focused on the light of the present. The lessons I had learned from my journey were profound. Love wasn't about sacrificing yourself to keep someone else happy. It was about partnership, mutual care, and respect. I had spent so many years trying to hold on to a life that wasn't meant for me. But now I understood the beauty of letting go and embracing the unknown. The day my daughter was born was a moment of pure, unfiltered joy. Jacob held my hand tightly as I brought her into the world, his face full of awe as he cradled her tiny form. "She's perfect," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Ethan stood nearby, his eyes wide with wonder. "I'm going to teach her everything," he declared, his youthful enthusiasm lighting up the room. As I held my daughter in my arms, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me for so long. This was what I had been searching for, not in the false perfection of my old life, but in the imperfect, Beautiful reality I now called home. Looking back, I could see how every painful step had led me here. My marriage to Ryan had been a chapter of lessons, teaching me resilience, self-worth, and the importance of choosing the right kind of love. Jenna's courage and Jacob's unwavering kindness had helped me rebuild. And now, with Ethan and my daughter, our family felt complete. Sitting at our dinner table one evening, surrounded by laughter and love, I marveled at how far I had come. Jacob caught my gaze, his eyes filled with the same warmth that had steadied me through the darkest times. "You're amazing, Rachel," he said softly. "You've turned everything around." I smiled, reaching for his hand. We did it together. In that moment, I realized I had found not just happiness, but true contentment, a life built on love, trust, and the unwavering belief that even the most broken hearts can heal. And for that, I was endlessly grateful. As I sat on the porch of our home, watching Ethan play with his little sister while Jacob painted in the golden light of the setting sun, I felt a profound sense of peace. Life had taken me through heartbreak and betrayal, but it had also shown me the beauty of resilience, the power of love, and the importance of family. My journey wasn't perfect, but it was mine, a testament to the strength we all carry within us to rise after the fall. To those who feel lost or broken, remember, happiness isn't about where you've been, but where you're going. The future is yours to create. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more inspiring tales of life and love, subscribe to Life Stories for new videos every week. Together, let's explore the beauty of human resilience.